Morning. I'm delighted to be with you all here today, and especially excited that climate change and the environment are on the agenda today for discussion. As a young child, I was fascinated by the nature of my backyard, but I was also very surprised to learn that a species could be endangered, and also to learn that kids around the world didn't have enough food to eat or water to drink. The more I learned about both of these issues as I got older, the more I realized how interconnected they were. While our planet has vast resources, decades of pollution from fossil fuels, a rapid pace of consumption, all of these things have contributed to the degradation of the environment and a rapid increase in CO2, which is causing our climate to change. This is affecting not only the air that we breathe, but the water we drink, and that water that is used for growing crops, washing our clothes, producing energy, and so many more things. Climate change is already affecting people around the world, with more extreme weather events, increased flooding, higher temperatures in some places and lower temperatures in others, extreme droughts, rising seas, and acidifying oceans. Even in Chicago, we're seeing increased rainfall events and more flooding. All of these affect children's ability to find food and water safely, and they have systemic impacts beyond what you might consider. Much of the conflict in Syria can be traced to a historic drought that displaced 1.5 million people from their farms into the cities. As climate change worsens, there will be more situations like Syria, where people are hungry and thirsty and can't find work because they don't have enough water to farm their fields. All of this is to say you don't have to look far to find children that are already affected by climate change. Luckily, there are some really exciting solutions to addressing climate change, and there are people who are working every day to provide resources to children already affected to build their resilience to these events. I'm so pleased to introduce our guests today who are going to tell us more about the issues and fantastic solutions. Andrea Shrestha is the co-founder of Lemonade, and Gautam Narasimhan is a senior advisor on climate, energy, and the environment with UNICEF. So welcome to both of you for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
So I want to kick off the conversation with a question for Gautam. I touched on this a little bit. It can help us understand what are we talking about when we discuss sustainable environments and climate change.
Thanks very much.
And thanks very much for having us here. So it's rooted in saying that if we really care about what we can do to ensure that children have a better future, along with ensuring that a child has the right to live, that a child has the right to thrive, every child has the right to live in a clean, safe environment. Because unless you provide that right for a child, a lot of these other rights are no longer meaningless. If you're talking about children whose very lives and livelihoods are threatened by cyclones and floods, and you are not doing what you can to both address the root causes as well as provide solutions to that, a lot of the other work that we have been doing over the past decades start being meaningless. I mean, I can go into a little more about what climate change and the environment and polluted environment need for children, but I'll pause there to make sure I don't hijack the conversation. So.
Well, please feel free to share your extensive knowledge with us. So I guess, helping people to understand, they might be loosely familiar with these issues, but can you tell us what will the world look like in 20 years at the current pace, because of how the environment, the state of the environment and climate change? And what trends, I guess, are we seeing for kids?
So I'm very much hoping that, the world can go up in a few different trajectories. And I'm very much hoping that the scenarios that I'm about to describe is not the trajectory that the world chooses to go. Because as we will get to, there are very concrete solutions that we can implement now to ensure that that's not the case. But if you look at the trajectory of what the models predict climate change will do, you are looking at an increased incidence and frequency and ferocity of events such as cyclones. So over 150 million children in South Asia alone are susceptible to cyclones. You are talking about a world where there is increased water stress. Over 500 million children now already live in areas where they are suffering, where they live in areas from water stress. If you take that one step further, about 60% of areas where extreme weather events related to climate change are likely to occur are in areas where political systems and economic systems are fragile. So now you're talking then about not just immediate impacts upon children, but upon the impacts upon societies that are the least able to cope to these impacts, which then leads to a world of greater inequality because climate change, the poorest will get affected. And when it comes to pollution, it's always the poor who get affected the most. So what you end up looking at, unfortunately, is in a world where 20 years, where the inequality that we're talking about as our headlines today is perpetuated, where the poor become poorer, and where children are losing their right, first their immediate right to life through immediate extreme weather events, their lives, their ability to build a better future themselves by the fact that education and health systems and water systems are compromised, and their lack to be able to build a sustainable future in their communities. Because more and more the very societies that they live in are threatened and they end up having to move, for example, through unplanned urbanization to cities.
So, as you pointed out, hopefully we take a different path, but I think what we want to, make sure we talk about today is that there are already solutions on the ground addressing these issues, and Lemonade is one of those really amazing stories of how business and innovation can really disrupt the scenario that Gato was describing. And so, Andrea, I'm hoping that you could tell us a little bit about Lemonade's story, what inspired you to found the company in 2010.
Sure. Would you like me to demo a product?
Please, that work on it.
All right. I'm always that person with props and then the demonstration. Okay, so basically the way our products work is there's a solar panel and then a circuit with a rechargeable battery and LEDs, and that's laminated into this sort of inflatable, call it like a core, and then you blow them up. I didn't do that very well. But, and then this inflatable core kind of becomes a lantern, and it provides an ambient diffuse source of light, and it's also waterproof, and they float. And so, but when they're not in use, they can be packed flat like this, and then you can just charge it on the go. And we also now have versions of it that charge phones, which is this big.
How would you charge it if you didn't have electricity?
So you just put it out in the sun. They all have different sort of performance specs, but in a full day, this lantern will charge, and you get up to 24 hours of light on the lowest setting, which provides a night light when it's completely dark. So
Mobile renewable energy.
yes, completely just portable infrastructure, really. And then they have ways of charging with USB and you can charge your phone and things, but without electricity, you just need the sun.
Amazing. So when you guys founded this, what were you thinking? What drove the creation of this product?
So it was a little bit accidental, but my now partner Anna and I, we were actually graduate students in architecture school, and it was just after the Haiti earthquake. And we were kind of, like everyone I'm sure in this room, we were watching these stories about people who were struggling after that earthquake, and especially at night, they had to rely upon things like candles, which are dangerous and hazardous, and kerosene lanterns, which are toxic, cause burns. I mean, children, I think, suffer the most with respect to that as well. And we were thinking, well, there has to be a better way. And we knew about portable solar lighting, but we were thinking, why isn't this something more widely used on the ground after disaster? On top of the fact that there are just a whole other list of emergencies, right? You have like medical emergencies, water, other things. So lighting really wasn't at the top of the list, but we thought it was something that could add value. And our big idea was to make something that packed flat so that it could be transported in large numbers and distributed at the scale that is required oftentimes after a disaster.
And so one of the things you brought up was kerosene lanterns and candles. Obviously that costs money to buy kerosene, and that's another resource that's often limited. How much do these typically cost for a family to procure?
I think there are a couple metrics that you could use to answer that question because it is a rechargeable product versus something like kerosene, which is consumable. Our model is generally actually we partner with the organization. So, I mean, we're a very small company, but through our partnerships with NGOs and charitable organizations who oftentimes are procuring the product on behalf of beneficiaries, or there are other projects we do where the products are just donated out of need. And so while we retail our products for a certain price, for example, if you go to REI, you'll see you'll see them there or on Amazon. Behind the scenes, we do what we can to sort of reduce the cost well below, I would say even like, there's like the wholesale price is typically like 50% off for retail. Not to get too much into into that, but when we work with organizations, we work with them based on a need. And so there's a lot that goes into also the transportation of getting stuff on the ground after disasters, or even just to faraway places, which is something I'm sure you know about because there's a lot of, I guess, embodied energy involved in transporting things on planes and boats. And so the cost end to end just depends.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And selling these types of things like campers through REI probably helps you do more donations to groups like you. So.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it also just engages a whole segment of consumers who are curious about things like how other places in the world have access to energy or even clean energy and want to support that.
So can you give us some examples of how Luminate has played a role in distributing these products to date? I remember actually my own company partnered with Luminate after Puerto Rico to distribute lanterns. So are there other examples where you guys have been active like that?
Yeah, well, I think that's actually a great example of one way we work. Again, we're very small, so we rely upon a lot of partnerships both on the NGO, the non-governmental organization side, as well as even the corporate side. 2017 is a great example where we just did whatever we could to make things happen, especially in Puerto Rico because there was Maria and Irma, I'm sure everyone remembers. And so out of that, a whole new sort of variety of partnerships kind of came about. And I think in terms of some of our core partners, we worked with a few organizations that specialize in disaster relief aid. One in particular, Shelter Box, they're based in the UK, but they specialize in, I mean, they're much smaller than like a UNICEF, but very targeted for disaster relief aid distributions. And I'm sure they've partnered with UN organizations all over as well. And so we work with them to sort of expand the footprint of where we would otherwise have been. And then in terms of when we work with corporate partners, we actually have the ability to print logos on our lights, which is nice. But we get a lot of like corporate partners who are interested in sponsoring a set of lights for organizations. And what we do then is typically try and match them with probably a smaller organization who has a need either for a disaster or even just education organizations who are providing schools for children where they don't have access to electricity, for example.
So I think throughout the day you're going to be hearing a request for you guys to take action and think about how you're going to take what you learned today back home with you to your job or to your community. And this is a great example of one of the ways, Luminate's a local company. It might present a great opportunity for a partnership for your company or something like that, where you could get involved with disaster relief and really understand exactly how that's benefiting communities and children. So, Gautam, I'll kick it back over to you. One of the things that you mentioned is building resilience. Could you tell us, how does UNICEF look at climate change and how that's going to affect children, and then translate that into action for kids today?
So in terms of, the point around this is that some of the best, UNICEF's approach is that some of the best defenses that we can give to children in the face of a changing climate and degrading environment is to ensure that the services they depend upon most, water systems, health systems, education systems, continue to function and are resilient in the face of disasters and in the face of environmental degradation. The theory and the practice being that, for example, if you look at places like Bangladesh, if you have a school that is resilient to cyclones, both in terms of school construction, both in terms of students in that school through disaster drills and being prepared when cyclones and floods occur, then you have a much better chance of that child staying in school after the disaster. And the longer that child stays away from school, the less likely they are to return. And the less likely they are to return, the more likely they are for a cycle of poverty perpetuate. So the way that UNICEF works is in focusing on areas where we have long-standing experience and credibility in both actions on the ground and in terms of influencing national governments. So the particular areas that we focus on are, one, in terms of water and sanitation, ensuring that water and sanitation systems continue to be resilient in the face of disasters. And what this practically means, usually, is a package of services that means working with partners such as NASA and the European Space Agency for remote sensing to first ensure that we can find sustainable sources of water. The second, using renewable energy for example, solar pumping to extract the water. And third, working with the community to ensure that there is a multi-use water system that's managed by the community to make sure that this water is sustainably managed and is resilient in the face of disasters and longer-term drought and longer-term water stress. When it comes to health systems, it is the increased use of renewable energy. For example, we've had a long-standing experience in using solar energy to ensure that vaccines stay cold. We're building on that experience to make sure that the health systems that we support have used renewable solar energy, not just, which is critically important for keeping vaccines cold, but also ensuring that there is light for things as basic as ensuring that there is light for mothers to be able to safely deliver babies at night. Ensure that there's enough hot water for deliveries and healthcare services to be functional. And also recognizing that, people say UNICEF is such a large organization, but the work and the budget that we have is frankly a rounding error compared to the budgets of national governments and partners and partners like that. So a key part of what we do is what we call proof of scale. Working to implement these on the ground, but also having a critical focus on ensuring that this is a part of what our partners do and that this is a part of the way the national government and we work with support, because that's where the impact ultimately happens. That's around health systems. In terms of education systems, the focus there is on disaster risk resilience and making sure, as I mentioned, that schools continue to function, but also increasing the use of solar energy, both for ensuring that, for example, there's internet connectivity, but also to ensure that the school acts as a hub for things like charging renewable solar lanterns, which then students take home at night. The path, especially for girl children, going home at night with light is safer, and it also provides an incentive for parents to send their kids back to school because they are coming back with light, which means that they have to spend, the parents themselves have to spend less time at night burning fire. So, and the fourth area that we're working on is around air pollution. You saw there in air pollution, by one statistic that I've seen, there's something like 400 million children live in areas where the air is actually toxic. And I'm not talking about above safe limits developed by the World Health Organization, but 5 to 6 times above that, actually toxic. And so UNICEF works and has made this a priority in 2 areas, apart from drawing attention to the issue. One is using our own premises and using our support to try and bring out what we can do in terms of air quality monitoring, so that there is increased evidence and data to support what this actually means to children. And the second, working with our long-standing partners in downstream health to ensure that they are more adequately prepared for the increased incidences of diseases that will occur, such as respiratory diseases, and ensuring there's proper supplies of things like pneumonia medication, incidences of which will start increasing as a result of pollution. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, that's a great example, or a great overview, I'm sorry. I'm hoping you could give us an example of a time in recent memory, maybe the Facebook example that we talked about, of how UNICEF is leveraging partners and data and technology to address climate change and the effects of climate change that are already happening today.
So there are 2 things on that. The first is, as you mentioned, what Anthony was referring to is a partnership that we did with Facebook, and we have a couple of other people, which was essentially being able to use Facebook's data for the first time as to where users and children were, so that we could better plan how to serve them and how to serve migration patterns in case of an emergency. But the second part is something that is using digital platforms as a way of engaging children and young people in the issue of gaming. And we've had a long-standing program called Climate Ambassadors, where children around the world speak up about climate change. They're not specifically related to digital, but we had children over 50, 60 countries who would, at a young age, produce things like comic books that showed what they meant, what climate change meant for them. And very pleased to announce that as part of our support for the ongoing campaign for climate action on Fridays for our future, there'll be about 20 plus country offices next Friday that are speaking out and working on this issue, and again, aggregating that for digital platforms.
Great, thank you. I think it's time for us to do some Q&A, so I want to give the audience a chance to ask questions, and if not, I have plenty more to ask myself. So, anybody?
Yes, I didn't catch it when you said how long the solar lanterns last after they're charged. I missed how many hours.
So this smaller one is up to 24 hours, and then this one is up to around 100 hours. But there's different settings, and some of the settings are brighter than others. But in a dark tent, for example, that's the context that I have, the lower settings can be sort of a nightlight. And then we have versions of the phone charger, one of which will give your phone, we all probably have phones with giant batteries, which isn't always the case for all phones, but most of your phones a boost. And then we also have one that has a bigger battery capacity that will fully charge your phone 1 to 2 times.
Yeah.
For the 400 million children who are living where the air is toxic, what's it doing to them?
So the effects are being you don't use the word horrific, but you should. The horrific effects are becoming even more evident. So there are immediately respiratory diseases. So because children breathe at twice the rate adults do. So you're talking about increased incidences of asthma, pneumonia, and associated diseases. There's increased evidence that this has cognitive impacts. Children who grew up in areas where there's polluted air are made of. In later life, there is now increased evidence that people who are exposed to air pollution have increased incidences of Alzheimer's. So this is a cycle that perpetuates. And now there's increasingly work that's being done to tie this to an economic case about what this actually means in terms of burden on health systems nationally. But as an umbrella point already related to air pollution, because one thing we should remember is that when we talk about air pollution or when we talk about climate change, we're not talking about different things. The drivers of climate change are the same as the drivers of air pollution. But something like, is it 80 or is it 90? A very high percentage of the economic and health burden of climate change is going to be felt by children under 5 years old. But I don't know if that helps address your question at all, but it's medically in terms of respiratory, it's cognitive, it's long-term impact, and there is now some evidence that's emerging about how air pollution affects placental DNA. So these are start becoming intergenerational effects.
Any other questions from the audience? In the back?
Yeah, sort of follow up on the space emissions and climate change. So the decision for climate energy is one of the largest drivers of energy. As being manufacturing and transportation of manufactured goods. So what do companies like Luminator or can companies do to sort of mitigate the production of these carbon emissions?
So I might just restate that for the audience. Hopefully I get it right. You were saying that a lot of the emissions come from manufacturing and producing goods, and obviously we want to reduce those emissions. So what can companies like Luminator or other companies do to reduce carbon emissions from manufacturing or other kinds of industries? So Andrew, I don't know if you want to speak to that or...
Although I'm sure you have a broader sort of answer. I don't know the macros, but I know I can speak to what we think about at least at Luminate. I think with respect to one, there's no perfect solution here, I think, at the end of the day. But I think the trick is to think about optimizing and value engineering what goes into a product and then the processes that support that. And then once the product is made, I brought this up earlier, but really the transportation of it too, I think, is a huge factor there. So in terms of the materials in our product, we do use a type of plastic, but it's completely PVC-free and phthalate-free, and it's a plastic that is used in medical-grade products. And so it's been selected specifically for the relatively environmentally friendly qualities versus other types of materials. So everything that has gone into our products, we've been thinking about it on that level. The second thing is just making them compact and lightweight actually helps save on a lot of the sort of factors in the transportation that contribute negatively to the environment. One of the things that we find we can't completely avoid is that if our product is for emergencies, at some point it's going to have to get on a plane. And so at least reducing the space that it takes up on a plane is somewhat, I think, helpful versus, more sort of bigger volume things. And at scale, that starts to matter more than it might seem at first.
Yeah, and I also would think about the offset in emissions that are being derived from using solar energy as opposed to using kerosene, which has emissions, or a coal-fired power plant in whatever country, that type of electricity is being offset by this. So there are probably, I don't know if you've run a carbon analysis, but it might come out to be even a net benefit.
We haven't actually run a carbon analysis. I think that would be a really interesting thing to do because, to be honest, like the disasters just keep happening. So it's just like on to the next one, anyways. But
any other questions from the audience? Yeah, I think we might need to wrap up too.
Okay, then let's not.
Or you have a question?
So I understand the initiatives that you're taking on more grassroots level and you're helping, the resilience project and everything, but a lot of the environmental problems are in middle income countries or the least developed countries, which are always also now a big focal point for private investment in the rest of the world. So a lot of that is adding in a lot of manufacturing and you're exploiting resources that were unexplored up to now over there, which adds to environmental degradation. And there isn't much awareness in those countries about the impacts of environment or stuff, the related impacts basically. So how is the organization dealing with all of these companies that are going in, exploiting the resources, labor sheet, for instance, you want to go there, which is all adding to the environmental effects in those countries?
Sure.
no,
So, are you sure?
I'm here to learn.
It seems like an easy question. So, sort of three sort of reflections on that. One is, and this is where the work that Andrea and others are doing becomes critical to the answer, because the root cause of a lot of the world that we live in today and the challenges we're facing is because we haven't really yet found a good way to mainstream economic development with environmental sustainability. And it's hard to say, but that's true. So, but the work that people like Andrea are doing helps address that, because unless you can demonstrate that livelihoods can be made in an environmentally sustainable manner, the whole thing can fall. So, and the second point, in terms of like what organizations and things can do, there are a couple of angles, both of which need to be pressed upon. The first is anchoring and advocating with business on the rights of the child. A child has the right to live in a safe and clean environment. Country and companies, especially large companies, have all in almost universities signed up to what are the child rights and business principles. And so that is a very effective lever for saying that if you care about things that you've signed up for, and the rights of the child are inherent in that. The second sort of reflection on it is that in most places we live in a market-based economy. And so it's also using the choices that we do, both as individuals and as organizations, to drive that market behavior. In terms of showing that there is a greater demand for sustainable products. In terms of showing that you will hold corporations to account. And that is where, to some extent, and that is where the action comes on two levels. It comes from individuals and then through the policy action. But of course, it's a large part of this in elements and others, unless they're purely authoritarian systems, is the ability of government to form policy and enforce regulations. And that is where a lot of our effort comes from. I don't know if that helps answer your question well.
So, good to know. One other point I would just kind of touch on this, but that we have real power as consumers, and when you are choosing where to buy your food, or how you consume water, or all these different decisions that you make on a daily basis, you can choose the more sustainable option, and that truly is having an effect on corporations. There's been a lot of corporate sustainability kind of blowing up in the news lately, and there's a question of if that's just greenwashing, and I think more and more that is becoming a true standard that corporations have to follow. And in fact, big investment firms like BlackRock and Goldman Sachs are saying, we want to invest in companies that have strong environmental and social governance. And if you don't have that, then you're not going to be as viable as an investment. And that's having a real effect. When the investors start paying attention, corporations are going to start making those shifts. So you can vote with your dollars. So think about that when you're purchasing goods, and just keep that in mind, that you can be a driver of sustainability every single day. So maybe I'll kick it back to each of you for one more question. Do you have either of you have any personal experiences that you kind of look to when you're feeling discouraged about climate change and kind of the pace of things, like that you look to and really inspires you to keep going?
I don't know if it's like there's one specific one specific personal experience, and I think for me, the thing that I love about doing something in clean energy as it relates to even something not so good like disasters is that in those moments where I mean really people are just looking to rebuild, something like clean energy and solar can help them rebuild better. So it's just an opportunity to do that. And I think it plays a role, especially energy just plays a role in so many things, as like you were saying, systems and infrastructure, that then people can better their lives in other ways, whether it's education, having light at night to study, or other things just even function in day-to-day life, run a business, whatever it is. And so those are the things that I love, that just like, even though we deal in objects, that things like Luminate or other solutions are playing a role in just broader infrastructure, especially after disasters, to help people better their lives.
The thing that gets me excited is just seeing how much of an issue and a priority this has started to become for children. I mean, a classic example is what's happening now with the marches inspired by Greta and happening all around the world. And there's, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, just on camera, but there was this fantastic sign where you had this, it's just these masses of children on, with a big banner in front that said, the adults are shitting on our future. And these are the people, as long as we in this room give them the tools and the abilities and not even a convenient way, but a viable way to make choices to where they can be environmentally sustainable, they will take it. Because they care far more about this issue than adults do. And that's inspiring.
Thank you, Gautam. Do you each have maybe one example of what you can do in your daily lives to further a healthy environment? Maybe something that you do personally?
There's the overview weasel answer and there's the specific answer. The overview weasel answer is be mindful. Be mindful about when you are purchasing what the impact might be. Be mindful of when you are taking political action, what the candidates that you're supporting feel about this issue. And more specifically, just think about your own consumption patterns and your own buying patterns. Are you making the choice? Everybody says a personal choice, but are you, one of the biggest contributors to climate change is the increased use of meat. I mean, we're not saying that people should be vegetarian, but are you factoring that into how you eat? Are you buying, when you buy, are you making a conscious choice to select products that are going to be better for the environment? In your workplaces, and all workplaces to some form or the other have corporate sustainability initiatives, what can you be doing to ensure that those initiatives are targeted towards climate and the environment?
Yeah, I think for me, especially what I learned in working on Luminate is, I know that there's, like, if you're in a Whole Foods, for example, you see the, beautiful packaging that highlights all the things about maybe just the product, but also that supply chains matter. So in consumerism, taking it one level deeper, and that's really what's scaling behind the product. So it's not just the stuff you see. So I think also just making choices, even thinking one level deeper, makes a big difference.
Absolutely. One easy thing that I like to do is just always carry a water bottle with you. The amount of plastic that you're offsetting by just carrying your own refillable Camelback everywhere it really adds up over time. And that's something super easy and it never hurts to drink more water anyway, so it's a good win-win. And I think, both the examples you guys gave are wonderful. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. And I think we'll go ahead and wrap up here so we can move on to the rest of the presentation today.